The impact of Putin's war is starting to set in, startling even his most ardent state TV propagandists. It's all fun and games till they seize your Italian villa. That's what one of the most prominent Kremlin propagandists found out for himself this week, after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. In 2019, before he was poisoned and imprisoned, opposition activist Alexei Navalny and his team released a video report that revealed state TV host Vladimir Soloviev owns not one, but 2 villas in Italy down the road from George Clooney's beloved estate on Lake Como. His neighbors have protested since he bought the property, even launching a petition in 2019 to try to get the local authorities to make sure he didn't obtain Italian citizenship through his residency. The Kremlin mouthpiece, known for constantly condemning Europe and the West for their supposed perversion and decay, was thus exposed as an absolute hypocrite. Last Christmas, Navalny's investigative team, FBK, videotaped the state TV host's luxury abodes and left him special gifts, Ukrainian chocolates, since Soloviev is also well known for his years of anti-Ukrainian propaganda. The Kremlin's talking head was enraged and complained about what he considered an outrageous privacy violation, but worse was yet to come. Soloviev learned this week that the latest sanctions imposed against the Kremlin's regime and its accomplices would impact him personally. His access to properties in Europe is now being impacted, and perhaps his ownership as well. During Friday's edition of The Evening with Vladimir Soloviev, the host raged, "I was told that Europe is a citadel of rights, that everything is permitted, that's what they said. I know from personal experience about the so-called sacred property rights. With every transaction I was bringing paperwork demonstrating my official salary, income, I did it all. I bought it, paid crazy amount of taxes, I did everything. And suddenly someone makes a decision that this journalist is now on the list of sanctions. And right away it affects your real estate. Wait a minute, but you told us that Europe has sacred property rights." Stunned and dismayed, Soloviev griped, "All of a sudden, now they say, are you Russian? Then we will close your bank account, if it's in Europe. And if it's in England, you're allowed to keep no more than a certain amount there. Why? Because you're Russian." Prominent economist Mikhail Kazin chimed in, "And that's if you have an old account. They won't open a new one." Soloviev asked, "Is this the Iron Curtain?" Germany-based pundit Alexander Sosnovsky replied, "Yes, absolutely, the Iron Curtain in its worst manifestation, painted in LGBT colors." This reference again exemplified Russia's intolerance towards human rights and sexual minorities, which nonetheless did nothing to prevent Soloviev and other Kremlin propagandists from acquiring expensive real estate in what they consider to be degenerate, immoral Western countries. Appearing on NTV's program Our Own Truth, Svoya Pravda, RT's editor-in-chief Margarita Simonyan boasted, "I'm not worried about sanctions, isolation, prohibitions or the dollar exchange rate. We used to live without iPhones, we can also do without Paris if need be. It's wild to even contemplate that when the fate of the nation and the future of the world are at stake. As for those who say no to war, and are ashamed that they're Russian," Simonyan asserted, "I am ashamed that they are my fellow citizens." Attempting to deny Russia's intensifying war against Ukraine, Simonyan claimed, "Nobody is fighting against Ukrainians. We're liberating Ukraine." She followed up with another ludicrous claim, "No one is bombing peaceful Ukrainian cities." In her tirade, Simonyan derided those who were caught unprepared or complained that the Kremlin was taking too long to act with respect to Ukraine. She said, "It's clear that such actions don't get planned willy-nilly and you need to be prepared for them, including in the economic sense. When we listened to the Security Council, Mikhail Mishustin, Prime Minister of Russia, uttered important words, we can imagine what kind of sanctions there will be. We anticipated them and we've been getting ready. That also took time." Simonyan described various preparations undertaken by the Russian authorities for years, directly undermining the talking points that attempted to link the timing of Russia's invasion with the embarrassing US withdrawal from Afghanistan. In fact, experts in the know have been referencing the Kremlin's secret plans for years. For example, in April of 2021, appearing on Sunday Evening with Vladimir Soloviev, Andrei Sidorov, Deputy Dean of World Politics at Moscow State University, predicted, "Everything will start in Ukraine. We will be forced to step onto the battlefield in a fight for which they think we're not ready." The host asked, "A fight against whom?" And Sidorov clarified, "Against the collective West." In 2022, once Russia's war against Ukraine had fully begun, Sidorov emphasized the importance of choosing the right words during his Friday appearance on Soloviev's show. "Don't call it occupation, call it brotherly help." While most in the West are too savvy to take Russian propaganda at face value, Moscow's experts are grateful to have the ones who broadcast Kremlin-friendly talking points. Referring to Tucker Carlson as the most popular host in the United States, during Thursday's segment of the evening with Vladimir Soloviev, the host complained, "They're accusing him of being a Russian spy." Analyst Dmitry Drobnitsky replied, "Well, Tucker is most definitely ours. That's that." As for Putin's biggest cheerleader, former US President Donald J. Trump, who described the Kremlin's moves in Ukraine as genius, Putin's men in Moscow anxiously await his return as their sole hope for relief from rapidly accelerating Western sanctions, which will soon include the disconnection of Russia's biggest banks from a global messaging system known as SWIFT. During his Friday broadcast, amid tense discussions of Western sanctions, Soloviev theatrically looked down at his watch and asked, "Is Trump coming back soon?" Putin finally cops to dead Russian troops in Ukraine. Moscow has publicly acknowledged that Russian troops have been killed in action in Ukraine, marking the first time the Kremlin has admitted to casualties among its army since President Vladimir Putin ordered an invasion of the neighboring country on Wednesday. "Unfortunately, there are killed and injured among our comrades," Igor Konashenkova, spokesperson for Russia's defense ministry, announced in a Russian state television address on Sunday. The spokesperson did not offer any specific numbers on the dead or wounded, but claimed that Ukrainian forces have suffered many more casualties than the Russian side. The Ukrainian government, meanwhile, has claimed that some 3,500 Russian soldiers have been killed since the start of the war. Ukraine's Ministry of Internal Affairs said in a Facebook update Sunday that 352 Ukrainian civilians, including 14 children, had been killed, and that 1,684 people, including 116 children, had been injured. As the body count rises in Ukraine after Russia's unprovoked invasion, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's office announced the two sides would meet somewhere on the Belarusian border. The meeting is set to take place Monday, and came after Zelensky said he would agree to talk but not in Belarus territory, which Russia has been using to launch attacks on his nation. "We agreed that the Ukrainian delegation would meet with the Russian delegation without preconditions on the Ukrainian-Belarusian border, near the Pripyat River," Zelensky said in a statement. In a later video address, he said, "I do not really believe in the outcome of this meeting, but let them try. So that later not a single citizen of Ukraine has any doubt that I, as president, tried to stop the war, when there was even a small, but still a chance." Russia earlier said they had sent a negotiation team to Belarus to await Zelensky's approval. Zelensky had also suggested Israel would be a neutral location for desperately needed negotiations between the two nations. "The past night was tough. More shelling, more bombing of residential areas and civilian infrastructure," Zelensky wrote on social media Sunday. "The 4-day-old conflict has killed soldiers on both the Russian and Ukrainian sides as well as Ukraine civilians." News of the talks came as it emerged that President Vladimir Putin put his nuclear deterrent forces on high alert, blaming NATO leaders' aggressive statements, according to the Associated Press. The order paves the way for Putin to use nuclear weapons, which of course would lead to devastating consequences for all of Europe. Putin gave the order on Sunday, asking his defense minister to put the nuclear deterrent forces in a special regime of combat duty. According to the AP, Western countries aren't only taking unfriendly actions against our country in the economic sphere, but top officials from leading NATO members made aggressive statements regarding our country, Putin said in televised remarks. Senior officials of the leading NATO countries also allow aggressive statements against our country. Therefore, I order the Minister of Defense and the Chief of the General Staff of the Russian Armed Forces to transfer the deterrence forces of the Russian army to a special mode of combat duty, Putin said. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin learned of Russian President Vladimir Putin's plan to put his nuclear forces on high alert from Putin's announcement, a senior U.S. defense official said on a call with reporters Sunday. President Putin is continuing to escalate this war in a manner that is totally unacceptable, and we have to continue to condemn his actions in the strongest possible way, UN Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield told CBS, Face the Nation. Our voices have been unified with the Europeans and with the world that he needs to cease his aggressive actions toward Ukraine. And we will continue here at the United Nations and around the world to use every possible lever we have at our disposal to expose his actions. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki told ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, I'm not surprised at this information because Putin has tried every means possible to actually put fear in the world in terms of his action, and it just means that we have to ramp up our efforts here at the United Nations and elsewhere to hold him accountable. This is really a pattern that we've seen from President Putin through the course of this conflict, which is manufacturing threats that don't exist in order to justify further aggression, and the global community and the American people should look at it through that prism. This is all a pattern from President Putin, and we're going to stand up for it. We have the ability to defend ourselves, but we also need to call out what we're seeing here from President Putin. A senior U.S. defense official told reporters in a briefing Sunday that Putin's threats are very real and should be taken seriously, but it's not necessarily clear what Putin's next moves are, and officials are working to understand his next moves. We have no reason to doubt the validity of this order, but how it's manifested itself I don't think is completely clear yet, the senior defense official said. The official added the United States is prepared to defend against any threats to the homeland. It is always a priority to be able to defend the homeland and to make sure our strategic deterrence is capable, viable and ready at all times, the official said. The news comes as Russian forces continue their all-out assault in Ukraine and are using about 2/3 of their forces to date, the U.S. has assessed, according to the official. Russia has alarmingly begun to use siege tactics in Chernihiv, putting civilians and civilian structures at risk, the official said. Some Russian forces or saboteurs appear to be wearing Ukrainian military uniforms in an attempt to deceive Ukrainians, but they've been identified by Ukrainian forces, the U.S. official said. Some good news emerged Saturday. Some of Russia's attempts to attack in Ukraine are faltering. While they've launched upwards of 320 missiles, some of them are experiencing failures, the official said. Russian forces are still approximately 30 kilometers from Kyiv, and have been experiencing fuel and logistics shortages on the way, according to the official. They simply don't have a lot of experience moving on another nation state at this level of complexity and size, the official said.